Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Let's start the Let's Learn session number 4. So the topic for this is storage optimization, which is necessary when we are dealing with use cases like a search engine, where we are supposed to store the embeddings, which are of the size maybe 512 or 768 or more than 1000, depending on the hidden states of the transformer models that we are using. Since we are supposed to store the embeddings for all the corpus or the dataset that we are trying to build the search engine, so as and when the dataset becomes larger and larger, the amount of memory required to save the sentence representations will also increase quadratically. So that is where this concept of storage optimization comes into picture. So this will eventually reduce the size of the pickle file. And since the model, like the word embedding matrix file got reduced with respect to the size, it will eventually lead in faster retrievals with less latency. So these are some of the things that I'll be touching upon. The first one is why do we require dimensionality reduction of sentence representations? And later on, the important topic for this whole concept is the second one, that is anisotropy in transformer-based sentence representations. That is where there is a poor performance of BERT-based embeddings when we are using the cosine similarity as the metric to calculate the similarity between the relevant documents. So we want to overcome this particular degradation that is happening based on transformer-based sentence representations. And eventually we need to use some dimensionality reduction techniques as well to reduce the storage. So I'll be discussing on a very high level on these three available dimensionality reduction techniques, that is PCA, random projections, and last one is whitening. So whitening transformation, it is not only a dimensionality reduction technique, but also it deals with removing the anisotropy that is there in the transformer-based sentence representations. So it is not straightforward to compare whitening directly with PCA and random projections, because it does two separate things. And apart from that, I'll be discussing a case study, that is a COVID-19 literature search engine. So this is an open source Kaggle based dataset, which has almost more than 1 million literature papers of related to COVID-19. So using the data from the open source, I have built this search engine by using whitening transformation, and I'll be showing the demo later and the results obtained during this case study. Yeah, so coming to this, why do we require dimensionality reduction of sentence embeddings, as mentioned in the first slide? So reducing the size of embeddings can improve their utility in memory constrained devices. Suppose you are building some application or search engine in edge devices like mobile. So since you have a very limited memory RAM, so it is essential to do some storage reduction kind of a technique before we try to deploy it on those edge devices. Apart from that, this will reduce the latency of retrieving the relevant information, such as search engine and even face recognition. So even face recognition, we try to capture the image and try to match if a particular individual is already present in the records of the backend. Only then we try to give the access to a particular person. So even in these kind of image similarity based techniques, we try to reduce the image representations which we want to store in the backend databases. And third one is to improve the semantics of sentence representations by transforming them into standard orthogonal basis to compute cosine similarity. So we all know the formula of cosine similarity, but there is an assumption before we calculate cosine similarity. So what is that assumption is cosine similarity assumes that the two vectors for which we are computing the similarity are from the standard orthogonal basis. That is, suppose the Euclidean space, right? R2 or R3. So suppose there is a vector 1, 0 and another vector 0, 1. So these are the vectors that represent x-axis and y-axis, right? So these two vectors are form the coordinate axis or the standard orthogonal basis, because the condition if a vector wants to satisfy the standard orthogonal basis condition is those vectors when you do the dot product of those vectors it should be 0, which tells that those two vectors are orthogonal to each other. And apart from that, the length of those vectors should be 1. So those vectors should be unit vectors. So since I mentioned about x-axis and y-axis vectors, that is 1, 0 and 0, 1, if you do the dot product of these two vectors, then it will eventually result in the product will be 0 since they are orthogonal to each other. And these two are unit vectors. So if you take norm of each of these vectors, then it will be equal to 1. So since these two vectors satisfy the conditions, we can tell that they form the standard orthogonal basis. So this is the basic assumption that cosine similarity makes. So that the vectors like cosine similarity of x and y, it since this condition is being satisfied, we can compute the cosine similarity. But since I mentioned about the degradation of sentence embeddings that happen in transformer-based models, so over there, anisotropy behavior is observed, where the vectors are not in orthogonal basis. So that is why we need some kind of a transformation before we do the dimensionality reduction. So any doubts till now?
No, for me it's clear and really helpful already so far.
Okay. Okay, so coming to the next topic, that is anisotropy of sentence representations. So here, there is a study which has done some computations and plotted this graph. So the first graph, which says this is the average cosine similarity between randomly sampled words. So suppose, since you all know that transformer-based models, like a BERT at least, it has a vocabulary of around 30,000 words. So if you randomly pick any two words and compute the cosine similarity among each of the layers, suppose all the transformer-based models like BERT base, BERT large, so they'll be having BERT base will be having 12 layers, right? So with respect to each and every layer, when you compare when you compute the cosine similarity between randomly sampled two words in each and every layer, then you see the pattern. In GPT-2 BERT, this cosine similarity between two randomly sampled words is increasing. But do you think it should be increasing or it should be decreasing? Any of you can answer.
If those two words are separate, I'm assuming with every layer it should start decreasing, like more and
yeah. So if they are random words, right? So if there is no context at all, suppose you pick some adjective and you pick some stop word, then if there is no similarity between those two vectors, then obviously the cosine similarity should decrease, right? But this is not happening while we train the any kind of transformer models like Elmo or BERT or GPT-2. So the layers, it is increasing actually instead of decreasing, right? So this is the anisotropic behavior that is being observed in all these BERT-based contextualized representation models. So let me show you one more thing. Yeah. So anisotropy means all the word vectors should be aligned to the axis. Suppose here, I can give you one example of isotropic distribution. So you would be aware of Gaussian distribution, right? So Gaussian distribution has 0 mean and 1 standard deviation. So if you plot that Gaussian distribution, you know how it looks like. It will be in a circular or a spherical shape, right? So that is the example of isotropic distribution. So here, the first one is almost similar to isotropic distribution, because here anyways, the variance is 30 in y-axis. That is why it is elongated in y-axis compared to the x-axis. But suppose if this variance in y-axis is 1, then you can observe a circular pattern or a spherical pattern. So that is a isotropic distribution. But what is happening in all the layers of BERT or transformer-based models is we are observing anisotropic distribution. That is why you can see. So what does anisotropy mean? So all the word vectors, they are not aligned to the axis. That means there is some correlation between the word vectors. So here you can see there is some rotation that has happened to all the vectors. So here you can see there is a positive correlation between all the vectors. So you can represent a particular vector with another vector using some constant, if there is some correlation, right? So if there is some correlation, then it all sums up to the same thing. So here you can see, even if there are, if you pick very distinct words, randomly sampled words, then obviously the cosine similarity will be closer to 1. Here you can see in GPT last layer, even if you pick random words, there is a high chance of getting the cosine similarity equal to 1, because you can see this kind of a anisotropic behavior. So here, how can we, anisotropy, how can we represent geometrically means? You can see the representations occupy a narrow cone in the vector space instead of being uniform in all directions. So since I mentioned here, it should have been uniform, but it has formed a very narrow cone. So whenever this kind of a narrow cone kind of a representation comes, that is where all the random vectors will become similar to each other, even though it should not be. So after adjusting for anisotropy, the representations have become more context specific in higher layers. So here you can see once this anisotropic behavior has been adjusted, how the plots have become. So these are the correct plots, how it should be, after doing some transformations that I'll discuss in further slides. So this is the expected behavior, which has been achieved by using the anisotropy adjusted transformation. So here you can see there is no the similarity between randomly sampled words is 0 at the final layer, which is as expected. And the last plot, that is average intra-sentence similarity. So what does the, I'll just tell the definition of intra-sentence similarity. So suppose you have a sentence which is having around 5 words. So intra-sentence similarity is the cosine similarity between the average of word embeddings of the particular sentence, and with respect to the word representations of each and every word in a particular sentence. So if you have have you understood the a definition of this intra-sentence similarity, or I can explain it once more?
Yeah, so from what I understood, it's the average average number of the entire sentence compared to each of the embeddings of the single words, right?
Yes, correct. So this intra-sentence similarity, so for every word, since we are talking about contextualized representations, we can assume that a particular word can have different representations with a different context, right? So this if you are talking about glove or fast text embeddings, which are static embeddings, so irrespective of the context that you are using, the word embedding would remain the same, right? But in contextualized word representations, a same word, the representation would differ with respect to the context. So the intra-sentence similarity should be as low as possible. That means when you take the mean of all the word embeddings in a particular sentence, if the mean is very distinct when compared to the each and every word representation in that particular sentence, then it means that this is contextualized. So every word is much different than the mean of the complete sentence. So that is where you can see the plots with increasing number of layers, the intra-sentence similarity is decreasing. It is almost zero coming to GPT-2. Any questions till now?
No.
Okay. So I'll be just talking on a high level on these dimensionality reduction techniques. So the first one is PCA. So you would be knowing how to compute the principal component analysis. So here, basically, we try to find out the principal components with a decreasing order of explained variance, and we try to pick the only few principal components which are covering a maximum number of explained variance. So why do we try to move away from PCI is because of the time complexity. So here, as the dimension of the matrix increases, the time complexity is very huge. So here you can see it is quadratic. No, it is cubic. So here k square n, this is suppose you are calculating the PCA for k by n dimensional matrix. So the first one, k square, this comes while you compute the covariance matrix, and the k cube will come while you compute the eigenvector and eigenvalues for the covariance matrix. So it is very computationally expensive to do PCA for a very large dimensional matrix. So that is where we try to find some other useful dimensionality reduction techniques which are having less time complexity. So the second technique is the random projections. So here it tried to reduce the time complexity from cubic to linear. So here you can see the linear time complexity for a matrix of size n by k, and d is the dimension that you aspire for. Suppose your matrix is of 768 dimensions, but you want to reduce it to some maybe 256. So d will be 256. So there are two different methods in random projections. So that is first one is Gaussian random projection, and the second one is a sparse random projection. So Gaussian random projection is you try to generate a random matrix which is following a Gaussian distribution with a size that you want, the dimensionality reaction size. So the minimum size can be computed using this Johnson-Lindenstrass lemma. So here, given the number of samples that you have, you'll be able to calculate what is the minimum number of dimensions that you might be able to compress. So that is the random projection matrix. So this is computationally efficient way to reduce the dimension of the matrix compared to PCA.
Shreyas, I have a question.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to say something about the performance, and not in terms of memory, but in terms of like accuracy? Because I can imagine if the formula is more complex, it keeps more of the original data, maybe, but maybe not.
Yeah, I'll comment on that actually. Yeah. So
okay.
yeah. So when compared to when we talk about any dimensionality reduction technique like PCA or random projection, any type of transformation that we do. So obviously, if we are compressing the dimensions, there is a loss of some variance, or there is loss of some data. So obviously there will be a slight reduction in the accuracy as well. So when we talk about PCA or random projection, any of these two methods, there will be some degradation in the accuracy when you try to reduce the dimensions and use it in some kind of a downstream task. But when I try to explain the whitening transformation, so here there won't be any degradation. Instead, there will be an improvement. So whatever the initial embedding dimension, suppose 512 or 768, whatever the representation you had, even after you reduce the dimensions from 768 to 64 dimensions, there will be an increase in the performance of the accuracy. And with that, you are able to reduce the dimensions as well. So there is a win-win situation here. So this is achieved because, as I explained here, we are trying to remove the anisotropy in the sentence representations in whitening transformation. So so that is the here, once we are able to remove the anisotropic behavior from the representations, then we can satisfy the third condition. So here, since I mentioned, if you are supposed to use cosine similarity as the metric to compute the similarity between the actual text and the query text, then it assumes that those two vectors are derived from orthogonal basis. So once you remove the anisotropy from the word representations, then the word vectors would become orthogonal to each other, and they are derived. They'll be like you can confidently tell that they are from a standard orthogonal basis. So whitening transformation helps us to remove the anisotropy. Along with we can also reduce the dimensions. So that is where, since I mentioned, there will be an improved performance apart from just dimensionality reduction that can be observed in whitening transformation. So here, coming to the time complexity, here you can see the space complexity is just O of n, and time complexity is O of n. When compared to PCA and random projections, you can see how much beneficial this whitening transformation is. So these are some of the benchmarks that are published in the research paper. So here you can see so this is Spearman's correlation, or whatever the scores that you are seeing in this particular table. So, and this STS is a semantic textual similarity task. So for this particular task, you can see how the numbers have improved after whitening the BERT-based sentence representations. So here you can see the first one, glove embeddings, they are static embeddings, and the second one is BERT-based embeddings, which are anisotropic. And once you compare here, you can see the green arrow, which tells that there is an improvement in the Spearman's correlation when compared to all other previous benchmarks. So here, whitening 256 means that they have reduced the dimensions of the BERT from 512 to 256, apart from just whitening the transformation. So coming to the use case, COVID-19 literature search engine. So this is just the description. So the papers, how many papers are present in that particular open source data set, and how they have filtered only COVID-19 based literature based on out of a very huge corpus of medical publications. So here at the bottom, you can see they have based on these keywords, they are able to match these keywords and extract the title, abstract, and the full text of all the papers that are matching these keywords. And here, this diagram just tells how the data was collected. So bioRxiv and medRxiv. So these are just internet servers where all unpublished work will be present. So they have taken all the papers which are present in medRxiv, bioRxiv, and PubMed. And based on some identifiers, they have removed the duplicates. And based on these keywords, they have extracted the full text from all those matching COVID-19 based literature. So I'll just show the demo before the last slide. Yeah. So suppose I try to find out what are the safety protocols to be followed during COVID-19 pandemic. With whitening transformation, you can see it is taking 82 milliseconds, and the memory on disk is 430 MB. And the similarity scores, here you can see all the titles are based on the query text. A proposed process of risk mitigation, developing guidelines before, during, and after COVID-19 pandemic, ensuring safe practice during the pandemic. So here you can see the scores 81, 73, 72. So if I do not use this whitening transformation, so this will be for a whole 768 embedding storage. So here you can see the memory on disk is 1.2 GB, supposed to 430 MB, and search latency is 145 milliseconds, and without like with whitening it was 80 milliseconds. And here you can see the similarity scores. So it improved actually. With whitening it was 80, 75, 71. Here it is 70, 67, 66, and these are a bit different titles. Even though these are a bit matching with respect to the query, a whitening transformation was able to give more accurate predictions with a very high similarity score compared to without whitening procedure. Suppose I enter some other query. Multiple organ failures that occur due to COVID-19. Yeah, 93 milliseconds. So here you can see multiple organ failures. So one of them is a kidney injury, systemic complications of COVID-19, multiple organ failure as a result of COVID-19 coronavirus infection. So 68, 62, 61. Without whitening, 145 milliseconds. So here, yeah, here also 63, 69, almost similar. Few of the queries you can see an improvement. Otherwise, it would be at par. Last one, let's try with what are the food habits to be followed post.
Just a question, Shreyas.
Yeah.
For example, here we see the second article, a mini review on the impact of COVID-19 on vital organs. And it seems that that one is also a bit related to the query, right?
No, I'm saying that without transformation also, it will be able to pick similar articles, but the similarity score might be low.
Yeah, so I was just wondering if this one is, if on no whitening, it's on like, I think it was the second ranked. Then if you use whitening, would it also be like in the top 10, or would it be like maybe top 20 or top 50? Can you compare it in that way?
Can you repeat the question? I missed somewhere.
Yeah, so there was this second article, which was also related to vital organs, and there was no whitening, and it was secondly ranked.
Yeah.
So if we compare that to the option with whitening, would that then maybe be in the top 10 or maybe top 50?
Yeah, understood. Yeah, got it. Yes, we can compare like that as well. I haven't done that, but I can compare those kind of analysis as well.
Okay.
Yeah. And coming to the last query, so I have typed what are the food habits to be followed post recovery from COVID-19. So here you can see all dietary, nutritional related articles with the scores 81, 76, 75 with whitening. Without whitening, suppose we'll see. Yeah, so almost a similar articles only we have got, but you can see the similarity score over there. Before with whitening it was 80s and more than 75. Here you can see it is well below 70 for most of these. So Suppose I compare the second article, dietary recommendations during COVID-19 pandemic, it is 64. Suppose with whitening, we'll see how much it is. Yeah, the same. It is having 81 as opposed to 64 without whitening. Yeah, so coming back to the presentation. Yeah, so these are the almost similar metrics that I have shown during the demo. And coming to the conclusion, BERT-based sentence embeddings are not in standard orthogonal basis. That is where we try to do some whitening transformation. And computing cosine similarity between two vectors assumes a coordinate basis as a standard orthogonal basis. So that is why we try to do the whitening transformation to remove the anisotropy and try to derive the vectors from a standard orthogonal basis. And dimensionality reduction, it tries to optimize the memory storage and accelerate the retrieval speed. And whitening transformation, it removes the correlation among the vector features and transforms the embeddings into standard orthogonal basis. So all these I have shown in the images. Yeah, these are some of the references. Thank you. Any questions?
Nice. Thanks. I do have one more question. So you discussed the different dimensionality reductions techniques like the PCA and the whitening. So what would you say are still good use cases for PCA compared to whitening, or maybe the other option?
So you're asking me like what other techniques like where PCA can be useful, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so like definitely like here since we are trying to address a different kind of a behavior from BERT-based embedding, so we are doing the whitening transformation, but we are almost doing similar steps of what we do in PCA, like computing the covariance matrix, but some of the steps are different. So PCA is beneficial whenever there are no outliers in your dataset. And apart from that, one more thing is the matrix size should be smaller to reduce the time complexity kind of issues. So apart from that, we can use PCA wherever possible. But we need to keep in mind that there will be degradation in performance. So there is always a trade-off once you do the dimensionality reduction. So you need to take care of those trade-offs once you do PCA and all.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Nice sessions, Shreyas. It's very insightful. So these code base is it shared somewhere or?
I haven't pushed it. I'll push it to GitLab and share the repository.
So going forward, maybe we can start using these techniques.
Yeah, for similar use cases, I feel like suggested communities, it is a kind of search engine itself, right? So I have tried to I have already done this second step, latency optimization using Anoi, but the storage optimization is yet to be done. So we can implement this kind of a technique in similar use cases as well.
Great.
Yeah, the suggested communities would be a great one for this because it's the same use case.
And obviously, the data set, larger the better. So this COVID-19 literature search engine, it was having almost 0.5 million records. So to build the whitening transformation matrix, bigger the data set, the better the transformation matrix would be built in. So if we have a very less number of records in suggested communities, I assume we have just 2,000 or 2,500 records, right? So over there, if we can implement this, we need to also check if it is able to improve the performance or degrade the performance. All those analysis we need to do before deploying it.
Yeah, makes sense. And if you want to push your code to GitLab, I think you can do two things. The first one is there's already a folder on GitLab. It's called experiment.